Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News. It is Tuesday, September 16th. And the big story, of course, is free speech. What is free speech and what happens when one will utilize it? So, real quick, for those of you who don't know, when they're one of those guys that just yells First Amendment all the time, from the Constitution annotated. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That is the First Amendment in its form. Read it, understand it, go out and buy a book or two that gives you insight into it, not a Karl Marx book, but something that was written by maybe one of the people that was there or somebody around that time. That being said, why is we bringing this up? Because as you know, a civil rights leader, because he was a civil rights leader, Charlie Kirk, was assassinated the other day by person or persons to be discovered at a later date. And after he was killed, the socialist left decided to make a big holiday of it and, really whoop it up and show the pictures and say what a great day it is for our cause. They never say for America, say for our side that Charlie Kirk is dead and he's glad to be shot of him and all this kind of stuff. After they go through the trouble of doing all that, usually it seems on their corporate accounts, they started to get fired. They were getting fired for cause. They were getting fired for violating parts of their employment agreement they didn't even know that existed because of who they worked for, which was the United States government. Most of them, or were teachers, or something else that was in a critical, sensitive job, doctors, who shouldn't be gloating about the death of anybody, let alone a semi-religious civil rights character. So just so you can compare and contrast, because people don't want to talk, Kirk's whole investigation, which we've discussed, should stop being about a political person and about a civil rights movement. He was definitely a civil rights type figure. And if you want to see how out of control the left is, go back and look at the time period when Martin Luther King was assassinated, Jr. And you'll find, and this is just from some draw, pulling things off the internet, and it says no major media outlets celebrated the death of Martin Luther King Jr. during his assassination in 1968. Media coverage, New York Times, things like that, framed King's murder as a national disaster. News organizations broke in regularly scheduled program to report the news, showed live coverage of the ensuing unrest, which, of course, there was unrest. Lyndon B. Johnson declared a national day of mourning and ordered flags to be lowered to half-mast. So those of you who think Trump was doing something special, once again, you should have gone to a real college, right? The public sentiment was the same way. There were no openly big groups getting together to thank God Martin Luther King Jr. has been killed. Granted, as everybody knows, the Klan was very happy about it. Various groups in the South were very happy about it. But in general, you did not get the backlash that you are getting from the socialist left against Kirk that you had against the redneck racist South against King. So that should tell you right there that you have gone, we have gone further down that path than we wish to go. But I just thought I would bring that up before we got into the whole deal, because it's important for you to know that when you're looking at where we stand historically, because more so now than ever before, we've been fighting a civil war since Donald Trump's first term, actually since right around before that, when the Clintons decided to make the move against the American public. Okay. And it has continued like I said, don't give Barack Obama a lot of credit. He was just the guy who was driving the Titanic fast into the icebergs. And then Joe Biden, of course, what are you going to say, right? So, since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the loudest voices on the left are suddenly crying about their First Amendment rights. They have been fired from government jobs. They have lost cushy positions in the universities because of decorum clauses. They now discover that free speech comes with consequences. But the ironic thing is this: these are the same voices that spent decades weaponizing the First Amendment. Think about that for a second. Not to protect free speech or free expression or use of religion, but to silence it. Okay? When the founders wrote the First Amendment, it wasn't about giving you a hall pass to say whatever you want without consequence. It was about restraining government power. Madison said the censorial, this is quoting, obviously it's Madison, the censorial power is in the people over the government and not in the government over the people. Jefferson reminded us error of opinion may be tolerated where reason is left free to combat it. In short, the First Amendment was a shield for dissent against the state. And obviously, Amendment 2 is the sword. So today's left flips that entirely. They'll tell you, and I caught the beginning of it. Luckily, I ducked it when I was in school. They say free speech should not protect so-called hate speech. They say words are violence. They will say government has a duty to regulate ideas to protect people's feelings, but not everybody's feelings. The most downtrodden people are the most important people. If one were to quote The Simpsons, stupid babies need the most attention, right? That's not liberty. That's a managed discourse. That is censorship with a little smiley face sticker and a rainbow over it. So when we're seeing this, we say socialism, how do they always keep doing the right thing? They've had a lot of time to work on it, probably since President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, okay? They define or redefine speech as violence so that words become punishable as harm. They invent a fake category called hate speech and pretend the Constitution doesn't cover it. They hide behind private platforms and HR departments to censor critics while saying it's not a First Amendment issue. They weaponize vague decorum and professional standards to punish anybody who steps out of line. They apply selective outrage. They defend riots and radical slogans as protest, but brand conservative speech as disinformation or dangerous. You know, they smuggle in censorship under disinformation. They flood the culture with endless speech codes and microaggressions, rules to normalize the idea that speech must always be managed. The funniest thing to me is when you're on the tube and people say grape or unalived or this or SA or things like that, and they're telling you, I am a free speech person. They may be free speech people, but you know what? YouTube isn't. And they know they won't get any money or anything if they don't jump through the hoops. All these guys that are making the big money from this will all say the bad words the right way because they have already been trained to do it. It's already in our lexicon. Okay. So it has been working. And that is how you trivialize the First Amendment. You don't repeal it, you hollow it out until it's a technicality. It's not even a principle. Part of that is going to be, of course, unpopular things that your government is doing, allowing everybody into the country without doing anything about the borders. Well, there's colonizers, there's this, there's that. There's all these words that you can say to show to whoever matters that you are part of the movement, that you deserve more, that you are part of a power elite that is running the show here. You don't care about the Constitution. You don't care about the Declaration of Independence. You need to feel something is out there that you are better than some other people. And that's fine. But now you're realizing that that's not how this shit really works. I worked for a municipality at one point. We had to sign something that said we would not openly be involved in politics. We would not openly do this and that and the other thing, usually about politics, which was funny because it was a Democrat city and we had guys that would take off of work and go do Democrat shit. But that's just how things work, right? So let's look at it this way. If you notice a pattern under the Democrats, it was this. Under Clinton, the universities rolled out the speech codes. I got out when Clinton was coming in. Under Obama, Title IX weaponized against students and professors, and the IRS targeted conservative nonprofits. And under Biden, we saw the attempted disinformation governance board and government leaning on big tech to silence defense, which big tech more than adequately did their job of and is still doing the job at this moment, even though those people are not quote unquote in power, but as goes the tech companies, right? As goes them, so goes the swamp and the black economy and everything else that goes along with it. Not meaning the people, but the term. So what's the result is this. The First Amendment, once a shield for dissent, is turned into a sword for conformity. Instead of restraining government, it empowers bureaucrats to pick winners and losers in the marketplace of ideas. And instead of free debate, we're left with a culture of managed opinion. And if you will look at the things you are seeing right now about this investigation, specifically, because nobody knows anything, but everybody has an opinion, which, as we said over here, poisons the jury pool, poisons the public outcry, all these things that don't have anything to do with solid investigation, which allows a suspect federal investigative agency to really sit back and go on cruise control, right? Because everybody cares so much that they don't care. If you can wrap your head around that, you'll understand exactly what's been going on. So the founders, to wrap it all up, the founders knew free speech had consequences. They know you could lose your job. They did not know that people would be hounded for their beliefs, which is what occurred in the Democrat years against people that supported President Trump, people that supported the United States way of life. You would be hounded out of your job. You would be negated. Cancel culture is not the same thing as a consequence of saying something. If you have a job that says you cannot be involved in politics and you say, I'm glad that Kirk guy's dead, he was a motherfucker, right? And somebody's like, wow, you put that on your city account or whatever, that's on your Bank of America page, then you've got to go. You would go anyway, right? And you're like, but I'm just doing what I've been conditioned to do by my masters for the last 14, 18 years. And they're like, yeah, but that's only when we're in charge. Can you get away with that? Now that things are changing, at least temporarily, they cannot get away with doing the things that they did. Okay? And that's what you have to be hopeful for. You know, the left wants free speech without consequences for themselves and the maximum punishment for everyone else. And only now, when the same rules that they wrote are used against them, do they cry about censorship. The First Amendment is not a toy, okay? It's a test. Either it applies to all of us or it means nothing at all. So that's all I have on that one. But yeah, so anyway, that's why you people are losing your jobs. And you deserve it for either reason. If it had been whoever, assassinations in the American political system are frowned upon from on high. And if you people think that's how it's going to be, you think you're going to be terrorists, you think you're going to be the next incarnation of the Weather Underground, which some of you seem to think you are, then hopefully law enforcement will end up treating you the way that all these 60s and 70s groups ended up. Which we can't say because it'll get us kicked off of YouTube, but that's why we like BitChute and Rumble better. So if you want to see a longer version with all the documentation on this topic, you can go to www.southfloridaconservative.com. That'll be on there by the end of today. Like I said, it's Tuesday, September 16th, 2:15 p.m. And that is about it for us. Goodbye.